Got a quick little dry fly for you today, probably one of the fastest little dry flies that you can tie. This is a fly called a Bivisible. It's been around for a long time, and it's my understanding that it was basically created because trout will see darker colors on the surface than they'll see lighter colors. They have a more pronounced silhouette. So that's why there's so much brown hackle in here. The white is not for the trout, it's for the fishermen, because as you're looking down on this fly in the water or on the water, it's harder to discern on darker water and dark spots that brown hackle. So the white's put on there as an indicator for us, the fishermen. So imagine you could even make this fly in some other colors, say a black and maybe an orange or yellow hackle for different lighting conditions or whatnot. But this is the traditional Bivisible that I learned a long time ago. It's just 2 hackles and that's it. So like I said, it is a very quick and easy fly. That's the Bivisible. I'll get started. Start the Bivisible by placing my hook in the vise. This is a Mustad R50, otherwise known as a 94-840. It's a standard dry fly hook. This is a size 10. I'll go ahead and debarb the hook. For thread, I'm using a Danville 6/0 in black. I'm going to wax my thread just to give me a little bit more gripping power on this. Attach my thread about an eye length behind the eye of the hook. Take it on back to the end of the shank, actually just a little bit before there. Position it about halfway between the point and the barb as though I were putting in a tip, and I just moved it. We'll go back a little further. Actually, if you're going to be fishing this fly, this little tiny bit of thread here really isn't going to do anything, but since this is for the internet, it's got to be looking good. Now I'm going to tie in the first material. It is a brown hackle. This is a Whiting's rooster saddle that I'm using. And I have gone ahead and measured the actual barb length on this. I want these barbs to be the gap of the hook or maybe a little bit beyond. I'm going to bring out some of these barbs on the bottom. I'm going to trim these. What this will do for me is give me a nice little anchor right here. Then these barbs right here, I'm going to peel off. I'll explain why in just a second. But having just the stubs of those barbs on there just gives me a little bit more of an anchor for wrapping that in. I'll advance my thread up to about an eye length or so behind the eye of the hook, maybe a little bit more. Remember, the majority of this fly is all brown. We have just a few wraps up in front of the white. Now, the reason why I have this bare rachis here and here is so that when I start to palmer this around, I don't have barbs that are trapped going backwards like a tail. It will come around. I get that first wrap around, and notice how now the barbs start sticking out nice and 90 degrees perpendicular to, that one went behind it, perpendicular to the hook shank. I'm just going to keep advancing this forward. Each wrap is in front of the other one. All I'm doing is just making basically a dry fly body with this brown hackle. If you have a rotary vise, then this comes in really, really handy. This is a rotary vise, but I don't have a bobbin cradle for it. I could do it, but it's much easier to just go ahead and do this hand to hand. And then once I get up here, I'll stop and I will tie that in. Being careful not to lash down any barbs along the hook shank, keeping everything at a nice perpendicular angle. I'll stroke these back a little bit to make certain that there are none that are trapped forward. And I'll lay a little base down here for my white hackle. So I'll clean this up a little bit so I have a nice smooth area for the white hackle. This is really important because if you don't, then the hackle won't lay each wrap right next to each other. They tend to fall in the grooves of the thread. White hackle, this is another whiting rooster saddle hackle in white. I'm going to prep the feather the same as I did the brown. I'm going to trim these bottom barbs right here so that I just have some, hopefully you can see that against the brown there, but just the butts of those barbs right there is a nice little anchor, and then I'll peel a little bit of that off on that side. I'm going to tie this in, bringing my thread. I want to make certain I don't have any of that stem pointing out over the eye of the hook. I want it all behind the eye of the hook. And then I'll put a few wraps right up against that brown hackle and then bring my thread forward. And this also, as you see, when it comes around, the white hackles just come nice perpendicular to the hook shank. You're only going to get maybe about 5 or 6 wraps of this. Try and keep them tight next to each other so that you're not getting a lot of black thread showing up between, and it just gives you a nice pronounced white head to the fly. Essentially, see, that's popping into a little groove in the thread there. 2 or 3 wraps to secure that in. Turn that away. Sweep these barbs back so that I can just wrap down the butt ends there just enough to make a little head and a 4 or 5 turn whip finish. Trim away the thread. I'll stroke those barbs back out so they're more perpendicular. Some head cement on both sides, and the bivisible's done. Like I said, it's probably one of the easiest dry flies that you'll ever tie, especially in using traditional dry fly materials like rooster hackles, as opposed to foam body or something like that. It's just really, really simple and easy. It's a great panfish fly, good trout fly, all around, just a nice fly to have around in your box. So that's the Bivisible, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for joining me at Devise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.